John?
Absolutely. So our first question comes from Greg Schwab. And Greg wanted to know, what is the cost of the bill? How will it be paid for? And is this bill a standalone legislation, or do you intend to move it as part of the omnibus bill?
There has not been a score, is what they call it, on the bill, meaning the cost of it, because it's just a starting proposal. So we have not had a hearing, and it hasn't gotten to that process. It will ultimately be scored, meaning they will tell us if there are fiscal implications, how much those are. And right now under Congress, if something costs something, you have to say how you're going to pay for it. The second
question is, do you intend to move this bill as a standalone piece of legislation or as part of an omnibus legislation or a larger bill?
Yeah, so I don't get to determine that. I'm not the chair of the committee. I was able to sponsor the bill and have it introduced. Is my understanding, at least on the House side, that we do not combine multiple land bills into omnibus bills. We look at every bill kind of on its own face value. It might get passed as one bill and then get moved to the Senate, and it can change in the Senate. But as far as the House, if this bill moves, it will move as a standalone bill.
This next question, I don't know who it's from, but they asked, what are the timelines and who will manage the area? Will multiple agencies be involved?
So the timeline is, this is the beginning of the process. We have to have a hearing on the bill. The hearing would be noticed, meaning the communities would know, and by that time, we would know if we made any modifications to the map or any other provisions of the bill. If so, we would make those as part of the record so that the committee knows the changes the local community would want. The next part of the process is what's called a markup, which is where if it's scheduled for a vote out of committee, it's scheduled for a markup. And then from there, if it passes out of committee, it goes to the floor and all of members would vote on it, and then it goes to the Senate from there. So it's still a very long process. I can't tell you the timeline. There is no set deadline. It would either have to pass or not pass in the 113th Congress, which goes through December of 2014. So it has to pass by then, otherwise it would have to be reintroduced.
This next one is, I'm not sure if it's either a question or a bit of input. This is from Dan Hopkins, and he wants to know, please don't close the existing roads. Next one.
Now, this is a very important point, because I know, again, this has been an issue. And I don't know if the BLM wants to comment at all on this, but this is an area where we have to have assurance that the existing trails that are there will be preserved. The local council will be able to do that in a way that we currently can't do today. Number two is if a trail is closed, there's language in the bill that requires there to be a reason given. That it's for an environmental purpose, that it is because of endangered species or some other element, that it's not just for some arbitrary reason. And that, again, is an area where we have not, as a community, always been treated. So on this question, I'll take the hands that I see on the trail. So, yes?
You keep interchanging the words trails and roads. I want to know about roads, and are the trails different? What you're talking about are ATV trails, I believe, or hiking trails.
Correct.
Okay, what about roads?
The roads legislation, the roads provision specifically, I don't know.
The roads, the bill directs no roads to be closed. It is, as you said before, none of the physical roads are directed in the bill. It's silent. It's a great technical question. It does not require the government, like the current managers, to close it, and it doesn't strictly prohibit them from ever doing it under any circumstances.
So one thing we would want to do in the legislation is make clear the distinction between roads versus trails, and to ensure that the same requirements to maintain existing trails also applies to roads. Sir?
We may want to stand up and clear that up. They did a study out there, they designated the roads in the state. We need to stand up and tell you that was in previous legislation as well.
I guess my only question, I understand the legislation, do you have any examples of NCAs that have roads available in them that we can access and do?
Yeah, we can prepare some examples, but there are some, yes. I don't have them right
Well,
available
example,
today.
like that Stone Canyon, you got the same sort of process, you had the same sort of thing, you keep the roads open when they get shut down. I'd like to see an example where you make an NCA and you allow access to the public and not just shut it down.
Okay.
So far, I haven't seen that.
Okay, we'll research that, get that. Does anybody in Bill want to?
Well, we, several years ago, made a decision on travel management in the Gold Butte area, as well as, actually, it was a total of 500,000 acres. So we have a decision on designated routes in the Gold Butte area, and in the decision, we do say that if there are if we need to reevaluate roads, that we would take that back out to the public to reevaluate. But right now, we do have a decision on the designated roads in Gold Butte.
What does that mean? You have a decision to maintain them?
So we went out to the public, we identified all the roads in the area, went out to the public, asked them to provide us input, and then we took that and did an analysis with a preferred alternative, and then we, based upon public input and our own internal review and scientific information, we made a decision on which roads were going to be open, which roads were going to be closed, and that went out to the public, and then they're signed.
What's your definition of a road? Is it like a road or a two-track? Two-track road.
Yeah, anything that you can drive a motor vehicle on.
So why did you close some? Why couldn't they also?
We evaluated it for sensitive species. Half of Gold Butte is critical habitat for desert tortoise, so we took that into consideration. We took cultural resources into consideration, and we took use of the public into consideration. So if there were roads that hunters use or off-road vehicle enthusiasts use, then we tried to keep as many of those open as possible. And the number of roads in Gold Butte is 577. There's 500 and over 500 miles of roads open.
So what, is there any provision that would enable you to create a new road?
There is.
And that would be done through the local council. So what I'd like to do on this point is maybe bring back at a subsequent meeting the overlay of this area with the roads that were approved, so that that could get out and people can see what's in based on what's already been approved. And again, to the point, if there are questions of, why were other roads closed, or should there be any new roads considered, that's part of what this process, you open that process back up under this legislation. The difference is this time there will be a local council that would direct that or oversee that, rather than it just being done by the BLM alone with whatever public input they get. I mean, we need to formalize our local input on these issues, I guess is the point I'm trying to make.